Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /PettyRevenge, where people get little revenges on others and the outcomes are so satisfying. And in today's episode, we've got nasty kids, snobby university Karens, nightmare managers, and entitled idiots all getting taught lessons they won't forget. It's gonna be a wild one. As always, I hope you enjoy the stories, don't chuckle too hard, and you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened a while back. My then 15-year-old daughter and I visited the local humane society on a weekly basis. It was free therapy for her, as cuddling the kittens and watching them play was a great endorphin rush. We were in the kitten room when a little girl who's maybe 6 or 7 enters with her father. I watched as she manhandles the kittens. She was picking them up by their legs, hitting one on the head after it swiped at her, and we had to listen to her whiny voice saying, "That one's ugly. Yuck, look at his eye, that's gross." She was saying that about a kitten with an obviously healing eye injury. She eventually zeroes in on the only little orange and white kitten who was very chill, despite her aggressive handling of it. She then declared to her dad after a few moments that this was the one she wanted. Her dad asked if she was sure, and she said yes. She then spent a few more minutes holding him in the air, bouncing him around like a ball, pulling on his tail, and just being a little piece of crap. That's when I stood up and I went to the wall where all the cage cards were, and quickly found the sheet for the only orange kitten in the room. I took it out of the slot and then sat back down. After a few more minutes, I walk up to the girl and I nicely said, "Can I please have him? We're adopting him." She glared at me and she screamed, "No, he's mine. I'm taking him home." Her dad then walks over and I said we had visited him earlier and we even have his cage card. I'm sorry. He then told his daughter to hand the kitten over and she lost her crap. She carried on and she screamed like a spoiled brat for 5 minutes while holding onto the terrified kitten who was desperately trying to get away. She only wanted the orange one, and she didn't like any of the other ugly kittens. It took her dad yelling at her to finally get her to throw the kitten across the room and then stomp away. My daughter went and picked up the kitten, and long story short, Otis has now been happily living his best life in my home for 7 years, and we love him so much. My Facebook memory reminded me that today is the anniversary of his gotcha date. I hope that little girl never got a kitten. Opie was a frickin' hero that day, and I fully agree that I hope that girl never gets a pet, at least until she learns how to play nice, right? And I wish Dad recognized it, because nothing like going to a new home and having it be a complete nightmare. Opie also shares a picture of the cat she adopted, and look at this adorable thing. I'm glad to know he went to a good family 7 years ago who took real good care of him, because the alternative, well, we don't want to think about that, do we? Because this person comments, "We adopted a bunny once because he was too cute for his own safety. My husband volunteered regularly at the shelter. And Mr. Nibs was a cute little Netherland dwarf who was attracting people who really just wanted a stuffed animal. The last straw was when a family came in wanting to adopt him, but they failed their interview after mentioning that their previous bunny had died because they forgot to feed or water it. At that point, we decided that he needs to come home and live the rest of his days with us. He ended up bonding with 2 of our other boy bunnies, and the 3 of them were besties for years. We spayed or neutered all of our bunnies, so he didn't have to be with the other boys. That's just who he ended up vibing with." Okay. So a few years ago, my mother-in-law flew in from across the country to visit my fiance and I for a week. We live in an apartment in a busy part of downtown Vancouver, and our garage opens up into an alley right next to the entrance of a liquor store. We're often blocked in by people when trying to get home or leave. We've gotten into a few screaming matches with people before, but this one was my favorite and also the worst. So we were coming back pretty late in the evening, maybe around 8 or 9 p.m. This guy, who we'll call Christopher, had parked right in front of our garage door, despite signs that say no parking, and the guy went into the liquor store to buy some booze. When the guy came back out and he saw us in our vehicle waiting him to move so we could park and be home, he made some snotty comment that we couldn't hear while still in our vehicle. He got into his car. Now, we thought he'd drive away, but the guy just sat there and opened a can of Hey Y'all, which is vodka iced tea, and drank it while looking at us and laughing. That's when I got out of my car and walked over to him, and politely, and honestly politely because I've gotten into way too many screaming matches, asked him to move so we could get inside. Well, he basically responded by laughing and telling me to go F myself, and that he'd do whatever he wanted. I tried to explain that he was blocking our garage and asked him if he could just move up a bit so we could get inside. Well, this is where things escalate really quickly. The guy gets out of the car and he got really into my face. I, still not wanting to play out this situation in front of my future mother-in-law, just stayed calm, and I kept asking him to please get back into his car and leave. Eventually, the guy starts pushing me, clearly trying to start a fight. So I called the police. While I was on the phone with him, the guy put himself and his face centimeters from mine. I stepped back and put my arm out while still on the phone, and the guy on purpose walks into it. He then starts screaming how I was attacking him and how he needs police help. Because we were right downtown, the police arrived within a minute from when I made the call, still on the phone with the operator the whole time. As soon as they arrived, the guy changes his tone and attitude completely. He starts telling them a sob story, how I approached him in his vehicle and threatened him, and he was scared for his life. Luckily, my fiance and future mother-in-law were still in the car, and they completely backed up my story. The guy was also parked illegally in front of my parking garage, so the police quickly took my side and demanded he leave. As he got back into his car, the police noticed his open can of Hey Y'all in the console and immediately got him back out of the car and demanded he perform a breathalyzer test. Unfortunately, the guy had finished the can before getting out, so he claimed he had found the can on the road and was planning to bring it in for the 5-cent deposit. His alcohol level was also below the legal limit for driving, so the cops couldn't do anything to charge him with a DUI. The police stayed with him until he left, but the last thing he did before driving away was throw his business card out the window at me. And the guy says to me, "You don't even know who you're messing with." So I pick it up as he was driving away, already starting to plan my revenge, although no idea what I could do with this information. The next day, I looked up Christopher, and it turns out he was a freelance graphic designer. The guy had his own website with a bunch of completed projects, and his full PDF downloadable resume. So I downloaded his resume and then got to work. I started applying for jobs on Christopher's behalf. I had his real phone number, real address, and real full resume. So that's when he applied to every McDonald's, Starbucks, grocery stores, movie theater, literally any minimum wage job that I could find with a quick and easy application process. I must have applied for over 80 jobs for him, all using his real phone number and real resume. I kept this up for weeks, searching for more jobs whenever I had some free time. Unfortunately, I never got to see his face as he starts getting the callbacks. But I'd like to think that for a month or two, he would receive phone calls throughout the week asking to set up job interviews, thinking that it was for his graphic design work, only to be told that it was for a McDonald's or Wendy's or wherever. A few months later, I went back to his website, thinking that I would start the process all over again. But his website had been taken down or moved to a new URL. You know what, that was pretty petty, but in my opinion, OP should have taken it a step further and gotten really petty and posted that guy's info everywhere. Like, I just don't understand people who act like that towards others, and the guy deserved way more. And especially in this economy, who knows if he even got a callback, right? And here's a little story. I once worked with a coworker who hated our boss. Like, the guy screwed him over when it came time to a raise. And the guy literally took our boss's cell phone number, and started making ads all over Craigslist, just advertising for stuff like free TVs, free mountain bikes, you name it, first come, first serve. And you can imagine all the text and phone calls our boss got. Like, it actually got so bad to the point that my boss had to change his phone number. And this was also back in like 2009, so I don't know if you can still use random people's phone numbers or if there's an authenticator to prevent people from doing stuff like this, but man, was that something. Anyways, on to the next post. So this is my freelance revenge story that happened about 8 years ago, and it was one of the first times I was ghosted without pay. I created a landing page for her elven symbol jewelry store. It was a bunch of esoteric BS, but I was young, and I was trying to break into copywriting, so I took any deal that I could. We agreed on a pure performance deal, so I got nothing up front, but we settled on a 5% performance fee. Her WordPress store was really small, and I was aiming to get like $300 to $800 out of it. But honestly, at some level, I would have been happy to just do it for practice and my portfolio. Long story short, I wrote the landing page and I built it inside her WordPress site. She starts running some Facebook ads to it, and I was shocked to see that it was actually converting. $120 on day 1, $200 on day 2, $150 day 3, $360 on day 4. You get the point. By the end of the month, that landing page had brought in $6,000 in revenue. I honestly thought I struck gold, and I thought to myself, $300 in royalties in the first month, that's awesome. I was gonna make bank from 2 days of work. Well, predictably, she disappeared the moment I mentioned invoice. 3 months go by and nothing. No replies to emails, calls go unanswered, and she's still running ads. And I can see all the sales coming in because I still have access to her website. Then out of nowhere, I get this panicked message saying, "My website is down. Are you doing this? Please stop." Now, I had nothing to do with her store going down, probably her cheap hosting or whatever. But after being ghosted for months while she made thousands of dollars off my work, I knew that this could be my one and only shot at getting paid, so I decided to play along. But I had to be careful. I couldn't just admit in writing that I'm the hacker and threaten her to pay up, because what if she went to the cops and showed them the messages? I knew that I had to make her think I was, but not admit to anything at the same time. So I replied to her, "I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna talk to you until you pay me what you owe me." And it turned out to be the perfect level of vague. I never said I hacked her website, I never threatened to keep it down, it just looked suspicious as heck. She immediately calls me and she asked me what I want. I told her I still have access to her website and Google Analytics, and I can see what she made off the landing page, and that I want what we agreed upon, which is 5% of sales from that landing page. It ends up just being shy of $1,500. She said she'll take care of it. We got off the call and I sent her the final invoice, and she wires the money immediately. She then messaged me with payment confirmation from her bank, and she asked me to enable her website. And I thought to myself, I can't believe it worked. I was literally shaking when I typed back this reply. I said to her, "I had nothing to do with your website crashing. You should talk to your hosting provider." I never did hear from her again. Isn't that just lovely, guys? It's like the universe wanted OP to get paid for their work. And with her not paying OP, she probably never paid for her hosting too. That said though, OP's reply was frickin' brilliant, wasn't it? Like if that were me, I'd probably type something like, "Yeah, I did it, so pay me or else," and then get myself into trouble if she did take it to the cops. Like some people are just so darn clever. Just like the OP in this next post. So during my freshman year at university, I'd been working on a group project with 4 other people. We had completed an experiment as part of a physics module, and we each needed to write a report, approximately 2,500 words to be assessed. As the deadline for this module fell in the middle of a really active few weeks, I took the uncharacteristically organized decision to write and submit my report a few weeks early. Job done. feel free to party over varsity week. Of course, one of my colleagues, Karen, left everything until last minute, and she called me in a panic 2 days before the due date, and she asked if I could share my report with her so that she could, quote, understand how to structure the report and present the data. So me, being a bit dopey and probably still a bit intoxicated from a week of partying, sent her my report in its entirety. The following day, the night before submission, she calls me again, and she asked if I could proofread her report and make any minor adjustments that I saw fit before she submitted. I agreed, and she emails the document over. Much to my horror, she basically copied and pasted my entire report. Now, I couldn't believe that she was moronic enough to send me the report to look at, given that she had plagiarized the whole thing. And this is where I became quite vengeful and petty. First, I used the find and replace function on Word, and I replaced commonly used words from our experiment with vulgarities. I then replaced a step-by-step methodology from our experiment with a step-by-step recipe for spaghetti bolognese. The data table was replaced with box scores from NFL games that weekend. I took the time to change the authors' names in her references to characters from Harry Potter. To top it off, I rewrote her conclusion as a confession that she had attempted to plagiarize the report. I then sent the revised document to her and fully expected to receive an angry phone call in response. Now, I did receive an angry phone call, but that's 3 weeks later when she was called in for a faculty meeting due to an academic misconduct. Apparently, being the dingbat that Karen was, she didn't even proofread the document I sent back to her. She just submitted it without even glancing at it. She hadn't just failed the module, but she was under threat of expulsion. This is because when she tried to blame me for the content of the document, she had inadvertently admitted to attempted plagiarism. Upon returning to the faculty 5 years later as a research fellow, I discovered the director of teaching had kept a copy of her report, and he routinely showed it to students as a warning to not plagiarize. What a petty revenge that was, and honestly, the director keeping the paper as an example was the cherry on top of this revenge. Like, imagine your paper being the prime example of what not to do in a class, and was repeatedly shown year after year. But yeah, 1000% Karen deserved what she got. Like, the audacity of her to copy OP's report word for word, and then ask her to proofread it, and fully thought there'd be no repercussions. Like, you know how I just said that some people are just so clever? Well, for each clever person, there's probably a bunch like this Karen. Again, she totally deserved what she got. Just like the sleazy salesman in this next post, guys. Oh my goodness. So here's a bit of backstory, and it makes the revenge even better. I worked in software sales for the bulk of my career. About 10 years ago, my company was hosting its annual user conference in Las Vegas. As a sales guy, I pretty much had free reign on expenses as long as it involved clients. Expensive dinners, drinks, tables at the clubs, you name it. The only unbreakable rule was we could not pay for strippers. Having been in the industry long enough, I realized what guys would do to get around this. It was common for them to explain to a manager at a strip club that they would have the girls' tips added to the bottle service. Even with that in place, I never thought it was a good idea to play that game. Nor did I think it was a good idea to go to a strip club with clients. It was never a good look in my mind. So that said, I was roughly 27 or 28 at the time. And one of the older sales guys, who's 40, who we'll call Jim, was the typical sleazy sales guy. The guy would tell half-truths to prospects, overcharge them, oversell, all that stuff. The type that creates a hassle for the services and implementation teams. But he still got paid, so he didn't care. When he got to Vegas, Jim would go crazy entertaining clients and himself. Sometimes, he would go to dinner by himself, but say that some senior VP was with him, and the guy also abused the stripper loophole. One of the reasons that he tried to get a group to the strip club each night was that he had a very conservative wife. She made the kids go to a Christian school, and the family went to church every Sunday, and she hated the annual trips to Vegas, to the point that he would tell stories that he wasn't allowed to bring his suitcase in the house. He had to leave it in the garage in the laundry room, where she would then wash his clothes and then sanitize the washing machine to clean it of the Vegas filth, in her words. On the last night of the conference, he organized a shuttle from one of the biggest strip clubs to pick us up in a group. There were some open seats that he was trying to fill to meet the minimum commitment for free entry to the club. Jim sees me speaking to a client and he invites us. I decline. He then starts mocking me about being scared of beautiful girls, or that I would probably freak out and pass out the first time a girl actually touched me, etc. Now, this normally wouldn't have bothered me, but he did it in front of my client. That's when I said I don't want to go because I don't think it's professional. He left, and I bought my client another round, and we joked about this D-bag. Then I was on my own, and I decided to walk the strip a bit and then head to bed early, due to an early morning flight. Now, if you've ever been to Vegas, there's people on the sidewalk handing out cards that are essentially ads for escorts. They legally can't speak to you, so they slap the cards on their hands to get your attention. After a few drinks, I start taking a few. Fast forward to the next morning, when Jim and I are sitting in the airport waiting for our flight. He had stayed out to 4 a.m. and he was a complete mess and totally hungover. I was 100% sober and enjoying his condition. At one point, he goes to the bathroom and he asked me to watch his bag. When he was out of sight, I add those escort cards into his bag. Well, when his wife went to do her laundry routine when he gets home, she was not happy. She didn't believe in divorce, but suddenly, they were going to church 3 times a week, had weekly counseling sessions with their pastor, you name it. This also led to Jim dropping out of his weekly golf league. He was telling us all the story at the office, looking for sympathy, and he swore that he never took those cards. But he also couldn't remember since he was so drunk that night, so he also thought he might have. Well, I guess this one time, what happened in Vegas didn't stay in Vegas. And in my opinion, guys, that was the perfect petty revenge because the best part was, Jim thought it was his doing. And that's what you get, like the guy sounds like an insufferable D-bag. And also, this seems like the kind of thing OP can do to him year after year. That's if he's ever allowed to go again. Sometimes, the best answer is no answer, and silence is loud to provocateurs. That said, I'm female, and I went to a food tasting recently at this Indian restaurant for an event that me and my 3 older male colleagues are planning. As soon as we walked in, the owner of the restaurant assumed immediately that one of my guy friends was the one with money, and he was the one in charge. I'm a rather subdued person when you first meet me, so I don't blame him for that mix-up. Upon the food tasting, he was doing a good sales pitch, and he tried to drop some humor in there. We start talking about catering, and he turns to my male friend, and he asked if I can cook, because I don't look it from how skinny I am. The guy's obviously assuming that I'm someone's wife, and he's not speaking to me directly as if I wasn't on equal parts. I just simply stared at him blankly, intensely enough for him to feel uncomfortable. Now, even replying to such a stupid comment is beyond me. And it wasn't a scowl, but it was enough of an unreadable expression that he could tell I didn't approve. Immediately, he retracted and he said, "I'm so sorry, I'm just being an awkward uncle." That wasn't enough to make me say no to the venue, however. We then start talking about corkage and supplying drinks and so forth. And as I'm the younger of the lot, he turns to one of the men and he says, "You'll need a limit on shots because, you know, the younger ones," gesturing to me, "can go a bit crazy." My friend told him I don't drink, and he just pressed on and he said to my friends I probably do drink because you know how girls go wild. Now this is a professional event and I came as a professional, but at that point, I felt as if I was being treated like a young bimbo. Again, I'm the one with the deposit and the final say, so I didn't feel the need to say anything apart from glare at him. After the tasting, he was very sure that this was a done deal. So before even getting a yes from us, the guy turns up at the table with the cost spreadsheet and the card reader. I was still contemplating whether or not to book this place. Of course, the owner's an ass, but the price is good, and I care more for getting the job done. If that wasn't bad enough, as a joke, as if this was the funniest thing ever, he passes me the card machine, and he says, £500 deposit. And then he laughs, as if the idea that I was gonna pay was the most outlandish thing ever. And he says, "Don't worry, look at her face, I was just kidding." Again, I simply stared, and the rest of my friends around me were looking really uncomfortable. It was a joke that bombed at the table with an awkward silence. That's when I told him we really appreciate the food, but the venue's not what we're looking for. This was the first time that we had addressed each other properly all evening, and the guy looked very confused to hear it from me. Again, he turns to my male friend to double check what I said, and my friend said, "Well, it is her event, we're here for her." Hearing him say that, the owner's face dropped. The truth was, I wasn't really happy with the minimum capacity of the venue, and I didn't like the fact that they were also renting out upstairs for a separate event, so I did have valid reasons to decline. But his lack of social awareness really tipped my decision over the edge. His attitude lost him around £9,000 in business, and I hope it stings. It was so satisfying to see his awkward expression when he realized that I was the decision maker. What a mistake that was, and hopefully the guy learned his lesson. And seriously, this is why you should always treat everyone with respect, because you truly never know. And I only wish I could see the look on his face when everybody was like, yeah, it's ultimately her decision, her event. And this person shares a comment that says, "I was leading a meeting between our company and some of the companies selling our product. I was the only woman. When I entered the room, I was ordered by one of the executives to bring him a coffee. Instead, I sat at the head of the table and called the meeting to order. I still remembered the look on his face." And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /PettyRevenge. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled People episode, where a psycho Karen tries to take OP's daughter and threatens to sue her. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.